By popular demand, it's royal biographer, broadcaster and Mail columnist Robert Hardman. Welcome to you both. Now, we were hoping that our Rebecca English could be able to join us this week, and I know that all of you in the comments were too. But unfortunately, she is off dealing with a serious illness in the family. Now, I spoke to Rebecca last night, who sends all her love to all our viewers, and she very much hopes to be back next week, so let's hope for that. Quick reminder now of 2 ways that you can stay in touch with us. First is to subscribe. That way you won't miss any of our extra shows, like the one we put out with Robert earlier this week. And the other way is to sign up to our Palace Confidential newsletter. There's a QR code to sign up on screen now, and a link to it in the description below as well. It is fascinating and it's free. Right, should we get to those royals? We'll start with Catherine, who was out and about at engagements in the north of England. First up, she visited the charity Family Action in Bradford, of which she is patron, and which helps children and their families recover from complex trauma. Richard, it is definitely engaging with children at these kind of events is very much her forte, isn't it now?
It really is. I mean, as we know, Catherine's big project is early years. You know, she knows the importance of that. For basically, she's convinced that the way that a child and an adult develops can be really influenced by those very early years, and there seems to be lots of evidence to support that. So that's one of her big projects, and she seems to be making a difference. In this case, she was visiting lots of different places that work with children. We know she's involved with the Scouts as well. She's a joint president of the Scout Association. There was a very sweet incident with a little 5-year-old girl she was at a therapy centre. Catherine was at a therapy centre for children who suffered trauma in various ways in Bradford. And there was a seashell, and Catherine was teaching her that you can hear the sea through shells. And it was quite magical, really. The girl seemed really taken by it.
It is. There is something about that that's a thrill the first time you learn it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You really do feel like you can hear the sea in those shells.
I always used to get very cross. I couldn't hear the sea. I think it doesn't sound anything like the sea. See, maybe I just have bad shells.
Bad ears?
Maybe.
Hello, what? Yeah, I think we need to get young Robert's hearing checked out, Ma and Pa. Anyway, Catherine then went south to the Peak District for a charity walk with Mind Over Mountains, which offers mental health support through outdoor activities. Now, this involved her spending 45 minutes in freezing wet conditions, which is fine because she's pretty hardy. But it was walking to and from a beautiful spot called Baslow Edge. And this change of engagement involved an outfit change. Now, Robert, you must have been to hundreds of royal engagements. Can you think of many that involved outfit changes?
It could be as many as 6, actually. I once counted 6 on a visit with the late Queen because, you know, times change during the day, the weather changes, you might have an evening engagement, but also it's, you know, obviously as a royal, you've got to look the part. I think one of the most dramatic uses of what I would call fashion diplomacy was when the Queen went to Ireland on her great state visit in 2011. And she arrived, the plane landed and the door opened and she came out in emerald green and everyone went, oh my God, that's absolutely amazing. But within a couple of hours, she'd switched to a sort of ivory outfit to go to the Garden of Remembrance in Dublin, because it's sort of saying to your hosts, look, I take this seriously, I'm respecting you, so I'm not just going to wear the same thing all day. And I think people expect, you know, and her dresser, Angela Kelly, was brilliant at this. I mean, she would sort of map out outfits sort of, you know, before every trip. But as I say, the highest number I clocked, I think it was on a state visit to Thailand, and there were 6.
Wow. That's, I mean, I used to see that quite a lot at the fashion shows with the influencers, but that's impressive.
I'm sure you could match that, couldn't you, Jo? 6 outfits in a day?
No, I can't be bothered. Once I'm dressed, I'm committed. That's it from morning to night. So, but these, we're focusing on children and the outdoors. They're definitely events that Catherine has sort of like come to own within the royal family, aren't they?
I think we do associate her with the sort of, you know, the outward bound element of the family. She's you know, she's energetic young mum. She loves this stuff, and as Richard said, you know, her early years programme. I mean, that's absolutely central. I think that is to her what, say, the Prince's Trust was to the King. It's something that she will be defined by for the rest of her life.
And do you think that it's been a quick transition for her, finding her identity within the royal family? Because I think sometimes we forget she wasn't born royal. She's had to carve out her own space.
But what she's done is she's worked hard at it, and she hasn't sort of rushed in. There's nothing kind of token about it. I mean, we need to remember, it was actually 2011 she married into the royal family, so she's been a royal now for quite some time. But she didn't just rush into early years. She did her homework. She spent years sort of researching it, talking to people, having lots of meetings, so that when the time came, she could speak with authority, and she still can. So no, I think she's sort of, it's more tortoise rather than hare, shall we put it that way?
Absolutely. And I think that we know that Catherine prefers us to talk about her work than her sense of style, but she's had a very long and strong sense of style, and we can't help it. So let's look closer quickly at a couple of those outfits. In Bradford, she chose this herringbone blazer from one of her favourites, Holland Cooper, and these wide-leg trousers from Jigsaw, which was the brand where she worked as a children's accessories buyer after university. We'll put links to those below, but also we'll give you some cheaper alternatives like this £97 blazer from & or this one from Crew Clothing, and this tailored piece from Mango, so see below for those. And to the outfit change for the hike, she was back in Holland Cooper, this time for the skinny jeans, roll neck from House of Brewer, and these Berghaus hiking boots that she's worn no fewer than 9 times in public, I believe. Now, she also wore a Dewberry Friel utility jacket, which unfortunately you can't buy anymore, but there are alternatives such as this one from River Island or this from Karen Millen. Now, as always, we'll put a link to those below. Right, to a very moving event now with King Charles and Queen Camilla. Robert Hardman, this was extraordinary, wasn't it? Tell us about it.
The King was marking Holocaust Memorial Day. It's an event he takes extremely seriously. In fact, exactly this time last year, I was with him because it was the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, and he was the first reigning monarch to actually visit Auschwitz. I mean, the worst extermination death camp in the world, a sort of place of unspeakable evil. He was there. He was very, very moved by it. But he's always had this sort of connection with the wartime generation, and he had a very special place in his heart for the Holocaust survivors. And he's commissioned a series of portraits some years ago, which were sort of, as it were, reunited with their subjects at the palace this week to mark Holocaust Memorial Day this year. And he met this wonderful woman, Anita Lasker-Wallfisch, who he's met several times. I mean, she sat for one of his portraits. He actually took her 100th birthday card round to her house when she turned 100 last year. She's one of those unbelievably sort of strong personalities. I did meet her some years ago, and she took part in an amazing documentary. It's out there. It's called The Commandant's Shadow, where she was introduced to the grandson of the commandant of Auschwitz.
Wow.
She was at Auschwitz. She was a great cellist, famous cellist, and she played the cello in the orchestra in the camp. I mean, her life story is just extraordinary. And the King's very fond of her. I mean, she is this sort of magnetic character. And anyway, she was at the palace this week, and they had a chat.
I love that.
It was it's very touching.
Well, I think in these times it means so much to the Jewish community to have that support from the royal family. And then we have this really sweet moment as well.
Okay. Hello, nice to meet you. This is Fergus. You should be honoured. This is the King. This is the King. Can you say hi? Ziggy's been saying good morning. Hello back. He's been told to say hello back.
Richard, that was lovely, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is Ziggy, who's the great-grandson. He's 2 years old. He's the great-grandson of a Holocaust survivor, also called Ziggy, who I think you've met.
Ziggy
Robert.
Schipper. Ziggy, who was a great character who would spend his later part of his life just educating, teaching people, telling them about what happened, making sure people didn't forget. But he was entertaining, he was moving, and I remember him showing me round the death camp at Auschwitz-Birkenau, and it was one of the most harrowing, memorable days of my life.
Well, his great-grandson Ziggy was very keen to give the King, I think it was his favourite.
And this is Ziggy's great-grandson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also called Ziggy, and he was keen to give the King a monkey. I think it was his favourite toy or something.
Oh, really?
But as quite often happens, when the King arrived, he clearly wasn't aware it was the King. I think in some ways, it'd be better if the king arrived wearing a crown, because then, he would be easily identifiable to children. So once they pointed out to Ziggy that that's the king, he handed over this monkey.
And actually a really interesting point, because if you think about the Queen, she knew she had to be seen to be believed. So that's why she always looked something like a human highlighter pen, didn't she? Sort of like one colour. Bold colour. The king can't really do that.
Yeah, with the Queen, she had that handbag. She had the distinctive things that people recognised.
So come on, Charles, you might need to wear a crown everywhere.
Exactly.
She used to. She often said, actually, she said, I see the look of disappointment on children's faces because they do expect her to turn up. She said, they expect me to come in a crown, in a carriage, and I'm just here in a day dress, and there's a slight look of, oh, is that it? But you're right, Joe, that she did. I mean, she took fashion. She wasn't remotely interested in labels or sort of fashion reviews, but she took fashion very seriously because you have to be
visual iconography.
Yeah. And because she would often say, people need to go away and be able to say, I saw the Queen.
Yes.
And if you're in a huge crowd, and she was the first to admit she wasn't terribly tall, she needed to be immediately identifiable. And then one of my favourite quotes of Elizabeth II is, I can't wear beige because no one will know who I am.
Exactly. and I hate to be a cheeky monkey, but apparently Andrew also has a toy monkey, doesn't he? So maybe he and Charles have got something to bond over.
Let's
now.
not go there, Joe, please.
let's
Sorry about that. Look, the King also showed off a new set of wheels at Sandringham this week. He has a new Lotus Electra R. Do you like the way I said that like I know anything about cars? Apparently he bought it himself for £160,000. Now, Robert, is it fair to say that this is a car where he's putting his money where his mouth is?
Yeah, I mean, he's someone who does, as he did this week with his film, we might come on to it later, about nature and why we need to respect nature. And here he is driving a very expensive, very luxurious, but very environmentally friendly royal limo, because it's...
Is it environmentally friendly? How environmentally friendly can a car really be?
I'm not a scientist. All I know is it's more environmentally friendly than some of those old Rolls Royces at the back of the Royal Mews, which chug along and do about 10 miles to the gallon.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Well, I mean, we don't really see the King as a petrol head, but he does appreciate a nice vehicle, doesn't he?
Oh, the King loves cars, yes. I mean, he, in addition to the cars at the Royal Mews, of which there's lots of state limousines and so forth, they've got a big private collection of vintage cars at Sandringham in a converted stables there.
Yes.
And that's estimated to be worth about 1.8 million, the cars. There's
It's
also
got a toy Aston Martin, which was given to Prince Andrew when he was a little boy, which was the exact replica, scaled-down replica of the one that had just been in, I think, Diamonds Are Forever or Casino Royale.
Oh, right. Well, we had an Aston Martin that was given to the King on his 21st birthday. That's probably the King's favourite car by the Queen. And a few years ago, he had it converted to use bioethanol. So it was,
that's right, I remember that, yes.
I remember when he got the car converted, he said, yes, it runs on cheese and wine.
I think there are
Me too.
I think there are 12 in the stables, converted stables in Sandringham, but that's not incling the sort of
that's more like a sort of car museum. I mean, I think it's in there. It's also got, I did the last time I was there, it had Prince Philip's London taxi that you used to drive around in.
It would be remiss of me not to point out that if you did miss Rebecca and my Royal Walk special in the Royal Mews, we got up close and personal to a lot of the royal cars. So, yeah, look out for that one. Go back through your archives and check it out. Now, if you want to see more royals behind the wheels, and who doesn't, do stick around to the end of the show for our world-famous montage. Now, Robert, I hear you were mingling with the stars last night at Windsor Castle. What was all that about?
Well, Windsor Castle was hosting what they said was the first ever royal premiere in a royal palace, royal film premiere, because the King has just done a documentary, a sort of feature-length 90-minute documentary called Finding Harmony, A King's Vision. And it's quite worthy, it's quite earnest, but it's essentially fascinating because it's explaining what makes him tick, and it goes to the heart of the principle that he thinks is most important, which he calls harmony, which is the sense that we are a part of nature, not apart from nature. That's its sort of central theme. But you watch this documentary and actually it does sort of bring together all those strands of his life. We used to think, well, one minute he's going on about education, and then it's architecture, and then it's the planet, and then it's buildings or whatever. And actually what this film shows is it's all really driven by the same thing, which is that we need to, remember our sort of part in the natural order of things. And the more that we ignore nature, the more trouble we're in. So that was the premise. So Kate Winslet was on the red carpet. By the way, they didn't have to put down any new red carpet because Windsor's got quite a lot of stuff on the floor already.
Yeah.
It's like a sort of huge, one enormous sort of giant 13-acre red carpet, really. And Kate Winslet was there, Rod Stewart and Penny were there.
Benedict Cumberbatch. Yeah.
Dame Judi Dench, various others. As well as being the star of the show, it's about him, and he's a sort of producer of it, and he's almost sort of the script writer because it's based on a book he wrote called Harmony. So
Very good.
he was having fun.
Were any celebrities there going, look, it's Robert Hardman, that royal biographer?
Well, I can let you into one secret, which is they didn't do popcorn, they did pastries.
Oh, really? Good show. I like that idea. But you touched on it earlier. You have your doubts that it's the first premiere that we've seen at Windsor Castle.
I think, well, the Palace was saying this is the first film premiere, but I happen to know because when I was writing my previous biography of the late Queen, I had access to her father's, King George VI, war diaries, and in it, on her 14th birthday, it says we had a screening of Dumbo. So I think there may have been the old Walt Disney premiere. But
that's fascinating. Is that what the 14-year-olds were into at the time?
I think in the middle of the war, you were grateful for what you got. A few years later, there was a premiere of Pinocchio. So they were very keen on their Walt Disney.
Oh, I love that fact. Gosh, he's full of them, isn't he? I love this. Well, let's hear a couple of your comments now, because we're going to start with Robert's special show that we put out on Tuesday. Whack the Good said, I learned two fascinating details about Prince Philip. It was his DNA that was used to confirm that it was indeed the Imperial Russian family who were executed, and that he knew Rasputin's assassin. What a man. He was a walking piece of history. Lots of you asked where you can see Robert's documentaries that he mentioned in our chat. Now, Robert, you must have the answer to that.
Yeah, well, some of them it's annoying. You can see some documentaries and not others, but I'm afraid, as far as I know, the documentary where I'm driving around. Actually, I think you can find on YouTube. I think you can find the one with me and Prince Philip on our trip around the castle in the park. It was called The Queen's Castle. It went out on BBC One in 2005, and it was repeated a few times. But a lot of these things, they sort of sit in a. I'm not a broadcasting executive, but I'd love to see more of them. Some you can see, some you can't. I'm afraid you just got to Google it.
Well, I would love to see you in your charity band back in your heyday. And
I've got the video.
I went down a rabbit hole trying to find it and failed. So don't let us down.
I've got it somewhere. I tell you what, next time you have me on, I will bring in the video of
I love this.
The world's most nervous keyboard player trying to stay in tune. And I did.
It's must-watch viewing. Now, a question to me, apparently, from Richard NZ. Great interview. Thank you, Joe and Robert. However, Joe, we learned that you have been in the UK since 1992. What's your secret to maintaining your fab Australian accent? Do I sound... I mean, I think I've got one of those weird accents that's kind of neither here nor there, because in Australia, people don't realise I'm Australian sometimes.
I would say your accent is not very strong.
Yes, it probably used to be stronger. I love that it... Thanks for calling it fab, but I don't think I've ever heard it called that.
I think you keep in touch with expats, don't you?
Some, yeah, some. Kathy Lett, hi there. Now to a couple from last week's show. This was a nice one from Colleen. Did anyone notice that Catherine's assistant or secretary was wearing the same blue tartan coat the same day as Catherine? The young lady looked tickled pink. So sweet. I bet it was Catherine's surprise for her. Not to mention an amazing story for the young lady to tell her grandchildren. We'll get that up on screen for you to see now. Now, that is very lovely, isn't it? To a question from Florida Gator now. Will Harry and Meghan become Prince and Princess of Wales when William is king? Interesting, Robert. What do you think? Yeah,
absolutely not. No, the next Prince of Wales will be Prince George. They'll stay what they are, which is the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, assuming the titles.
I love the way you say that. It's like dripping with derision. They'll stay what they are.
Well, royalty is about continuity. I mean, things change at the top, but everyone else they might move up and down the pecking order. But no, titles don't really change unless you're in the direct line.
As always, we'll try to answer your royal questions, and a reminder that you can see more of Robert answering questions in our special Q&A episode, and that will play straight after this if you missed it. Right, to the royals and geopolitics now. Must we? We must. And we learnt at the weekend that the King's unease, quote unquote, with comments made by US President Donald Trump had been communicated to the White House. The president had appeared to downplay the involvement of NATO troops in the US wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which had upset many here in the UK. Now, Robert, this was a fascinating story. What's your take on it?
Well, having recently, as we touched on in the last show, Joe, I mean, recently been to meet President Trump for my book on the late Queen, I can say that he is a huge fan of the royal family. I mean, we know that. He's the only US president to make 2 state visits to the UK. He loves the royal family. So I don't know what sort of diplomatic back traffic was going on, but I'm quite sure that if word had been passed in a very sort of subtle, it would be sort of whispers and diplomats talking to other diplomats. But I mean, if word had come through that the King is head of the armed forces, and as head of the armed forces, it's something incredibly proud of. Anything that in some way upset the armed forces, I think he would feel that he'd somehow let it be known. Now, I don't know, A, if this happened, or B, how it happened. But it wouldn't surprise me if, it's what diplomacy is all about. It's the stuff that happens in front of the cameras, but there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And it was noticeable that, within a day or two, the president made a very sort of wholesome, I thought very, warm tribute to the British Armed Forces. Now, he didn't mention other NATO nations, but he did mention Britain. I wonder why.
Well, that makes me wonder, because the president did put out a message calling the UK troops among the greatest of all warriors, Richard. So it seems that it might have happened and it might have had an effect.
Yes, and this followed very public comments which Prince Harry had put out, accompanied by images posted on social media by Meghan, and it was a very emotional statement from Harry about the sacrifice that the British service personnel had made, and he mentioned the number of deaths.
And so he was there. He did 2 tours of duty,
exactly,
Harry, with for NATO alongside American allies.
Yeah, so he was clearly appalled by President Trump's comments, and the King seemed to follow that. I've written an article, which you can find in the Daily Mail today, where I expressed my concerns about the King getting involved in this way.
Right.
I think it's the sort of thing that Queen Elizabeth wouldn't have done. Like, yes, most British people agree that what Trump said was wrong, it was inaccurate and it was offensive. But the royal family need to stay above politics. That's the key thing. They don't want to get involved in these
You say that,
disputes.
but he is the head of the armed forces.
He is, but we're represented by politicians, and our Prime Minister Keir Starmer had said he was seeking an apology from the President and that he expressed disquiet. And I don't think that's something which the King should be doing, and particularly the fact that it was made public as well through a newspaper unsettles me.
Yeah, we don't know who said what to who. I mean, maybe the King didn't say a word, but it only needs to be sort of put through the system that this is the sort of thing that he would find he'd have unhappiness, unease about.
Robert, I think some people might argue that Trump would be more concerned with what the King might have said rather than what Starmer said.
Well, all I can say is that when I went to see him the other day, and I spent quite a lot of time with him, several hours over the course of a weekend, and in that time we talked a lot about the royals, and at no point did the name Keir Starmer come up at all.
Yeah.
Well, I made the point in my article that Prince William didn't get involved, very wisely stayed clear of this, and I think in that he's following the example of his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth.
But he got involved. Do you remember he made a statement about the situation in Gaza about a year ago? So sometimes the royal family will, they don't stand back completely. But I mean, there are ways of exercising the soft power that we often talk about, and they're not always done overtly. They can be done covertly.
Now, this is the second week with you teasing me about your interactions with Donald Trump. What can you tell us? Can you tell us anything specifically about what he said about the royal family?
Well, I was there to interview him for the book that's coming out in April. I've written a book on the late Queen. It's for her centenary. It's a new biography. So it'll be in that. But I mean, it's no secret that President Trump was a huge fan of the late Queen, and he loves all the royal family.
Okay. Do you think that, obviously, the King's due to visit America in April, I think?
It hasn't been confirmed, but that's what we're looking at.
Presumably nobody wants any kind of diplomatic cloud hanging over that cosy visit.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's a really big year because this year is the 250th of the USA, when they were the first, as somebody said, it was like the first Brexit, basically, where America said, no thanks, Britain, we're off, and left what was, no one called it the Commonwealth in those days, but it's when America, took the leap and kicked us out, and it's a really big deal for both America and the UK. And I remember the 1976, the 200th anniversary of independence. And it was a fabulous sort of celebration of what you might call the greatest divorce in history. I mean, it's been a fabulous relationship.
Who was president? It was Carter.
It was it was Gerald Ford, actually,
right,
in '76, and that's when we've mentioned this before, but that's when the Queen went on her great trip over to America. To sort of, when the joke all the way through was no hard feelings, and they had this wonderful tour. The millions of people came out. Queen loved it, America loved it, and then there was this big ball on the White House lawn, and Gerald Ford led her up onto the dance floor for the first dance, at which point the band struck up. That's why the lady is a tramp. And the Queen thought it was hilarious. Ford was furious.
I love that she laughed. I also like the song in Hamilton that King George sings, You'll Be Back.
It's the best song in the musical, isn't it? You'll be back. Du, 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 du.
Oh dear, we must move on. Now, an extraordinary claim now about the royal formerly known as Prince Andrew. Say formerly because one royal expert is claiming that Andrew is still entitled to call himself the Duke of York. Richard, what in all... I'm speechless. What?
No, it's a very interesting article, and based on some comments as well by an expert on the peerage, Michael Rhodes, who really knows his onions. And what he pointed out was the King used letters patent to strip his brother of his title of Prince and his Royal Highness title. And the palace announced, in addition, that Prince Andrew had been stripped of his role as a peer. They said that he will no longer appear on the list of peers.
Okay.
But what Michael Rhodes had pointed out is that doesn't mean that he's not still the Duke of York, because there are hundreds, literally, of other dukes. There's, a member of the extended royal family, the Earl of Harwood, who's still an earl, even though he doesn't appear on this role. So the fact that he's not going to be using it, or certainly not in this country.
Are you sure? I sense he would love a loophole.
But he is still the Duke of York.
Yeah.
That's a fact. And Michael Rhodes was saying the palace was trying to cover this up, and they were trying to pretend by saying, oh yes, he no longer appears on the roll, when it was very disingenuous.
Yeah, he's not on. He's been removed from what's called the roll of the peerage, which is like a...
Yes, explain all of this to us.
It's like a sort of directory, if you like. It's a register of peers. But as Richard says, there are quite a few peers who go around calling himself Duke of this, or Lord Harwood, as he mentioned, the Earl of Harwood, who's a royal cousin, who's not on it. I mean, there's a process. They call themselves that. I mean, there is a sort of process to be on it. You're meant to sort of hand over various documents. It's a bit like sort of, showing various details when you open a bank account. And some peers just haven't got around to it, and they're not on the roll, but they still use the title. And technically, the Dukedom of York has not been abolished, because to do that would require parliamentary legislation, and no one really wants to see the government waste a minute of time, let alone parliamentary time, going through the motions of literally formally abolishing the Dukedom of York. So it's still out there. He's not meant to use it, but and he can't stick it on things like his passport or whatever, but he can use it on letterheads. He wouldn't be breaking the law, and he can call himself whatever he likes when he goes abroad.
Well, I was going to say, because you would say he's unlikely to use it, but maybe he will when he's abroad.
Well, we've seen that, interestingly, with his daughters, where even at the height of all the controversy I think it was Beatrice who attended an event in Saudi Arabia,
Yeah, it wasn't
I
that
think,
long ago.
where she
Yeah.
was listed as Princess Beatrice of York. So she's very much using that title, which she's entitled to do.
She's,
Both
yeah, the girls
daughters.
are sticking with the titles.
And then, of course, we've got our friends in Montecito who, sort of like sometimes use their HRH and sometimes not.
Well, and they insist on Prince and Princess for
Yeah,
their children.
yeah.
So the point is, if Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was to move to, to Bahrain or to Saudi or something, he might choose to start using his title. And this article made the point that he'd be perfectly entitled to do so if he wanted to.
And one other thing is, everyone says, no, he's now Mr. Actually, he's not Mr. He's Commander, like James Bond, due to his naval rank. So he can
please
still
don't mention Prince Andrew and James Bond in the same sentence.
He could still, and I'm sure when people start receiving correspondence from him or whatever, I think we'll see he's Commander Mountbatten Windsor, not Mr.
Because he doesn't want to be.
I don't know. Maybe he decides,
old
okay, I
Mr.
will be Mr. But he would be entitled to call himself Commander because
Being a Mr. would be quite a novelty for a royal.
I can't see many people queuing up to call Andrew Commander, can you?
No. Well, let's see. We're just going to have to wait and see. But there's been lots said about Andrew's relationship recently with his two daughters. But we know that he's still on good terms with Beatrice, as he went to see her and his 4-year-old granddaughter, didn't he?
These were really interesting photographs which were taken in a public place in Windsor Great Park, where Beatrice had been to visit her father, and she'd taken her elder daughter, Sienna, who very sweetly, she's learning to ride, at the age of 4, and they were with Andrew, who still goes for rides. Now, the context is interesting because there have been reports about the daughters have been distancing themselves from their father, and particularly Princess Eugenie. So Eugenie wasn't pictured this time, but this report made clear that she hasn't cut ties with her father. So,
and what do you make about the reports we're hearing that Andrew and Fergie are in a quote-unquote fragile state? Do you think that the daughters are aware of this and trying to smooth that path?
Well, this is something that our colleague Richard Kay had reported on before, that other members of the royal family they were concerned about him, and I strongly suspect that these visits to him, particularly before he moves to Norfolk, or at least in theory, are part of his daughter's efforts to make sure that he's okay, and whatever you think of him, they want him to be in a happy state of mind.
The move out of Royal Lodge actually does raise a question that no one's really looked at, but what's going to happen to, I would say, the most enchanting Wendy house, little toy house in Britain, which sits in the garden at Royal Lodge. It's called the Little Welsh Cottage, which was a scaled down house. It still has it's wired up electrics, water, everything.
Oh my goodness.
It's a child-size playhouse given to Princess Elizabeth when she was 6, and it's been at Royal Lodge ever since. And she and Princess Margaret loved it. The Princess Eugenie and Princess Beatrice, they loved it. It was something that they adored. It's still there, and just as the York grandchildren are sort of coming of an age where they would love it, they're going to move out. And I just wonder what's going to happen.
Can that be moved?
It was transported from Wales to Royal Lodge back in the 1930s. So I presume it could move. It seems a pity for it to sort of sit there and not get some sort of use. I mean, Queen Mary's Doll's House, which sits inside Windsor Castle, is a fabulous thing and draws millions of people.
Wow.
So maybe they can put it on public display.
I would love that. I'd love to see it.
I should tell our viewers that we're still trying to find out what's going to happen to the Queen's corgis.
Yes, we discussed that last week, didn't we? Yes.
So there's all these questions still to be answered.
Well, my offer still stands. South East London. Now, we've talked about the concerns, Robert, that various members of the royal family have for Andrew. There must be such an unsettling tension for the king, who has to protect the monarchy first and foremost, but he also still must have some familial concerns for his brother.
Yeah, I mean, I think the king has shown ever since he became king, he was much more conciliatory towards Andrew, I think, than people expected. There was a lot of talk that after the death of the Queen, Andrew would be sort of, cast out, and that didn't happen. I mean, it might be happening now, but that's more down to what Andrew's done rather than what the King's done. So the King is fundamentally, he's a Christian soul. He is understanding. He's forgiving up to a point. But yeah, sure, he's going to be worrying about his brother's sort of state of mind. And one did hear stories. I mean, before the loss of the titles, I certainly spoke to somebody who'd seen the Duke of York. It was about a couple of years ago, and had found him really quite unsettled, sort of at times incoherent. So I think they will worry about him.
We'll have to watch this space. Well, to a royal adjacent family now. And Lady Eliza Spencer, cousin to Princes William and Harry, held an engagement party in Cape Town in South Africa, but her father, Charles Spencer, brother to the late Princess Diana, wasn't there. Are we sensing a family feud here, Richard? What's going on?
Oh no, there is one. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Earl Spencer wasn't at this party. He didn't attend the wedding of his elder daughter, Lady Kitty, in Italy. And then a few years later, he also didn't attend her sister's wedding, Lady Amelia. Lady Eliza's the last of the three daughters there. So they have fallen out with their father some time ago. It's not clear exactly why. I've heard things, different reasons, but there's no question that they do not get on with their father, Earl Spencer. He went through a very nasty, acrimonious divorce from their mother, Victoria, years ago that played out in court and was certainly terrible for Earl Spencer's public image.
OK. Well, hear that. On to nicer news. That sound heralds the time to celebrate our unsung hero in and or around or working for the royal family. And Robert, it's another birthday girl. Well, they like buses, they come along all at once. Who is it?
This week, it's happy birthday to Carol Middleton, the mother of the Princess of Wales, the grandmother of future King, King George VII. And she plays a very key role, I think, very behind the scenes, but she's much loved by all the Wales children. I think both her and Michael Middleton actually have been the sort of unsung heroes of the royal story. They had to put up with so much unpleasantness and intrusion and just scrutiny in the early days of Catherine's marriage to William, and they did it with great dignity. And they've sort of held the line. And I think happy birthday, Mrs. Middleton.
Indeed, happy birthday, Mrs. Middleton. And Richard, what do you think has been and will be her impact on our future monarchs?
Oh, I think she's having huge impact. I mean, we've seen that as well, the fact that she and her husband Michael featured in that video that we saw after Catherine's cancer treatment. Yeah. I mean, I would say a suitable birthday present would be titles for them,
Well, we've discussed this before,
they should be the Earl and Countess of Bucklebury or whatever. I remember their friend Sir John Medeski saying to me years ago that he couldn't believe they hadn't been given titles yet. And it is quite odd, so I think that should be remedied.
Maybe that's something that will happen in the centenary year for the Queen. So maybe that would be something that they do.
I don't know, but I think it would be appropriate given all they've done for the royal family.
I don't think they'd want that at all. I think
why not?
Because I think William is, he looks at the monarchy in a different way. I mean, let's not forget, when Princess Anne married Mark Phillips back in 1973, the Queen offered Mark Phillips a title so that their children would have titles, and Princess Anne said no. I don't want to do that to them. I'm going to.
But this is a bit different. These are the grandparents of a future king.
Yeah, but they no other in-laws have got titles. I think it's sort of sending out the sort of messaging. I mean, it would be sweet, I'm sure, but I think the message it would send out would show that William was maybe not quite the sort of moderniser that he says he's going to be. If he's starting to sort of dish out earldoms, it's not a very 21st century kind of thing.
I wonder if those words might come back to haunt us all one day. That'll be interesting.
Well, remember, she did start, from her kitchen table, she started as a party paraphernalia firm. So I'm sure they'll be having a good party to celebrate today.
Yes, I think she probably knows how to throw a good shindig, don't you think? Yeah. Well, as I promised earlier in the programme, we dug into the picture archives to find our favourite photos of the royals.